On a tributary of the Ganges River, pilgrims gather to venerate a god. In Hindu teachings, Krishna offers solace to downtrodden women. This town has more than a chair. Thousands of women, young and old, have come to the childhood home of Krishna for one purpose: to live out their days in worship in the hope that death will come soon.
She is relegated, she becomes a zero, and all her powers are lost.
In many conservative Indian Hindu families, widows are shunned because they're seen as bringing bad luck. Superstitious relatives even blame them for their husband's death. The widow can become a liability with no social standing, an unwanted mouth to feed. Often, they're cast out of the family home. For many women in this culture, the loss of a husband can be an upheaval beyond belief. It can be a one-way ticket to isolation, poverty and despair. For thousands of women, it can also mean a journey to a place unique in India, to a town called Vrindavan. In the dark and damp back streets, India's forgotten widows chant for their supper. They do this for hours each day, for a few meagre rupees from the charity organisation that runs this place. These women were once revered as daughters, wives and mothers. Many haven't seen their children in years. Some will die in Vrindavan without seeing them again. Only the fortunate have a regular home. At this shelter, 120 women live in tiny windowless rooms, but it offers a roof to keep them dry and 2 meals a day. And it offers medical care from Dr Saroj Goyal. So doctor, is she okay?
She's okay.
She's a very old lady.
Very old lady, more than 100.
More than 100?
100.
How old do you think she is?
She says about 105. 110.
110 years old. So when did her husband die and when would she have been cast out?
60 years back.
60 years ago.
60 years. More or less they become so religious in the end because they haven't seen any happiness in their life, in the world. So they become so religious that they want to live here, they want to die here. It is their last wish.
They arrive each day to the so-called City of Widows, alone and penniless. Many of the 16,000 widows of Vrindavan have no choice but to beg. As a gesture of humility, some newcomers follow the custom of shaving their head. Conservative Hindus believe a widow must never marry again. She can neither attract attention nor be attractive, and must renounce all worldly pleasures.
A woman who is ruling the household, even in a rich family, suddenly finds herself bereft of all powers. And she is an inauspicious person, and nobody should even touch her.
Dr Mohini Giri is a leading light of India's women's movement and a widow herself.
So all of them come here in search of death, waiting for death. They are waiting on the roads, they are waiting on street corners, and ultimately it's so sad that when they die, there's no one even to pick up their bodies because a widow's body is inauspicious.
The shared misfortune of the widows of Vrindavan has brought them together. There's little help from outside relief agencies. Instead, the women gather in private homes and rely on the generosity of middle-class families in the town. Here the owner of a private school has opened her doors to counsel widows. But it's difficult being old and immobile. On this day, 97-year-old Lalita Goswami is practically starving and comes for help and nourishment.
ছেলে মেয়েদের কথা ছেড়ে দাও, ওদের
ज़्यादा भगवान है, पहला भगवान का
ওদের কথা মনে করে তোমার দুঃখ হয় বেশি। ওদের কথা মনে করো না, আমি তোমার মেয়ে।
আমি सोच रहा था माता जी, लड़का के पीछे क्या कर दिया?
Mrs. Goswami is a high caste Brahmin from Calcutta. But when her husband ran off with another woman 50 years ago, her two sons dumped her in Vrindavan and never returned.
ये लड़की नहीं है, लड़की के डबल है।
She told me she kept trying to jump in the river to drown, but onlookers kept saving her.
कब मर जाती? हमके जहर दे दो बाबा, मैं ना कोई कुछ देना मन जा रहा चले ड्रग बिस्कुट खा के मैं पड़े रहूं, बेटा एक कमरा दे दे और पंखा जल थोड़ी लैट्रिन बस, और कुछ ना मांगू बेटा, पैसा कुछ ना मांगू, नाले जो उनमें बहा दे जा बेटा, मैं आज सोए ना बेटा।
The younger widows of Vrindavan can work to supplement the income they earn from chanting. Any extra cash is put aside in trust to pay for their funerals. But some have lurched into prostitution or live in rooms where rent is paid in sexual favours. Clinics on the outskirts of town make significant business performing abortions on younger widows. Dr Mohini Giri has created a widow's sanctuary. She's treated like a saviour by those she protects at her shelter. Many of these women were married when they were girls of 8, 9 and 10, and some were widowed when they were barely into their teens. The widows here have returned to their colourful saris. Most of them still pray, but they're also kept occupied with craft projects and making incense for a nearby temple.
So we will teach skills to the women. We will see that even if women are illiterate, they will have certain skills in which they will become economically independent.
In her more caring home, 28-year-old Gaji is at least surrounded by those who support her. She suffers delusion and is convinced she's pregnant. Years of living in shelters with no friends or family has taken its toll.
If a woman is good at music, we encourage her to sing. If she is good at painting, we ask her to do painting. Whatever she feels that she is good at, we encourage her to do that.
The mistreatment of widows in India transcends all Hindu castes. But it's more evident in conservative poor families. Not surprisingly, the haves of Indian society fare better.
And reality learning we have. Reality learning, there's absolutely no change besides removing Sanjeev's name.
Jaba Menon is a marketing executive based in New Delhi.
He wants to cancel even those which have already been scheduled in Hindustan Times because it is not getting them any response.
When her husband Venu died after 6 years of marriage, she remained in his family home, along with her in-laws and daughter Venika.
I think we could do that, say, what was the first song? My parents or my in-laws never held me responsible for my husband's death. I knew I could run the family. Both my in-laws being retired and with a child and a full-time help, I knew that I had the confidence that I could be running the house.
Jaba Menon found her mother and father-in-law tolerant and accepting. She, after all, is the breadwinner in this family.
I did not have as much anxiety as to whether I would be able to send my child to school. I did not suffer from that anxiety. But the pain and the loss, the loneliness, the helplessness, everything was there as much in me as any other widow in Vrindavan would go through.
This is a nation of 40 million widows. The rates of widowhood are the highest in the world, mainly because most women don't remarry. At her shelter in Vrindavan, Dr Mohini Giri has some visitors. Two sisters have arrived to check on the welfare of their sick mother. And she's dying now?
She's dying. Today or tomorrow she'll go.
And so it's the old woman we had filmed days earlier. Her health has taken a turn for the worst. The two daughters have come to say goodbye and to ask Dr Giri to arrange and pay for the funeral, because they say they can't afford it.
Somebody has to take the body. Somebody has to take charge. Otherwise crows and eagles and dogs and all these things come and eat the body. The son ran away from here when he knew that his mother is not well and she could be a burden on him.
So what do you think of the action of the son, Doctor?
I think it's very bad. The action of his son is irresponsible. We should tell all our children that we keep them 9 months in our stomach and give them birth. And this is what we get at the end of our lives. And this is the story of all these women. कितना माँ के बेटा है बोलो? कितने लोग का बेटा है? हाथ उठाओ. I'm asking all those who have got sons to raise their hands. अच्छा, वो बेटा उनको लेने क्यों नहीं आता है? बेटा क्यों नहीं आता लेने?
Hindus believe they can achieve freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth if they devote their lives to prayer. The widows drawn to the town of Vrindavan may well hope for a better afterlife. Their mortal existence